Seraphine Vale had never been the kind of woman people noticed when she walked into a room. She was not loud, she was not decorated. She stood with the quiet of someone who had long ago made peace with being underestimated, and she used that quiet the way other women used perfume, deliberately, and to great effect. She was 23 when the bond found her. It arrived without warning, the way all true things do. One moment, she was crossing the great hall of Ironmore Pack, carrying a stack of territorial maps for the council, and the next moment, the air changed. The warmth hit her chest first. Then her knees went soft, then she looked up, and Caius Voss was standing 15 feet away, staring at her with the expression of a man who had just been told something he did not want to know. She felt it. He felt it. Every wolf in that hallway felt it, because a fated bond does not whisper. It announces. She had hoped, in the 3 days that followed, that he would come to her privately. She had hoped he would say something, anything, that acknowledged what had happened between them without the weight of an audience. She was not asking for declarations. She was asking for the simple human dignity of a conversation. He did not come. What he sent instead was a formal summons to the main hall on a Tuesday morning, with every senior pack member present and 3 visiting Alpha delegations watching from the stone gallery above. She understood, when she walked in and saw the arrangement, exactly what was about to happen. She understood it the way you understand bad weather when the air pressure drops, not with your mind first, but with your body. Caius stood at the front of the hall. He was dressed in his Alpha formality, dark clothes, the iron crest of Ironmore at his collar. He was enormous in the way that Alpha wolves are, the kind of large that fills a room even when he stood still. He looked at her when she entered. His jaw tightened. For 1/2 of 1 second, something moved behind his eyes. Then it closed. "Seraphine Vale," he said, and his voice carried to every corner of that hall without effort. "Daughter of the Beta line, I acknowledge the presence of the fated bond." The room went very still. "And I decline it." She had prepared herself for those words. She had spent 3 days turning them over in her mind, trying to make them smaller, trying to make them something she could carry. But hearing them said aloud, in that voice, in front of all those faces, was a different thing entirely. It was the difference between knowing a fire exists and putting your hand in it. She did not cry. She had made herself that promise on the walk over, and she kept it. She looked at him for a long moment, long enough that the room became uncomfortable with the silence, long enough that 2 of the council members shifted in their seats, long enough that Caius himself looked like he was being slowly turned on a spit. Then she said, quietly, so that only he could hear it across that distance, "I hope the war was worth it." He did not answer. He did not understand what she meant. She walked out of the hall. She walked to her small room in the Beta quarters. She packed 1 bag, not frantically, not while crying, but with the methodical calm of someone who had already decided what mattered and what didn't. She took her maps. She took her knife. She took a single photograph that she did not look at before she put it in the bag. She left Ironmore that night. No announcement, no letter, no scene. The absence was the statement. The Border Wilds were called that because they belonged to no pack, which meant they were considered useless, which meant no one had ever looked at them closely enough to notice what they actually were. Sarah looked closely. The Wilds were a stretch of dense, difficult terrain between the 3 largest pack territories, 60 miles of old forest, frozen river, and high rock that most wolves avoided because crossing it required surviving it first. It was brutal. It was isolating. It was, she discovered in her first month, full of people who needed somewhere to go. They arrived the way strays always do, one at a time, cautious, ready to be turned away. A rogue wolf who had been exiled from his pack for questioning his alpha's raid orders. 2 sisters whose pack had dissolved when their alpha was killed, leaving them unmated and unprotected in a system that did not know what to do with unmated females. An old female healer who had outlived her usefulness in a pack that valued strength over knowledge. Sarah did not recruit them. She simply did not turn them away. She built shelter first, practical, small, but real. Then she built systems, rotations for hunting, a method for monitoring the borders, a communication channel with a sympathetic trader 2 towns over, who passed along news from the surrounding territories in exchange for the medicinal herbs the old healer, whose name was Vanda, grew in the protected clearing behind their main camp. She did not call it a pack. She did not call it anything. It existed, and it functioned, and slowly it grew. By the end of her second year in the wilds, there were 31 wolves under what had quietly become her protection. By the middle of her third year, the first formal Alpha delegation arrived at her border. They came from the Fenwick Mountains, 2 days' ride east. Their Alpha, a large, careful man named Tolliver, sent his second ahead with a message. He wished to negotiate passage rights through the wilds for his trade caravans in exchange for formal recognition of her territory. She received the second in her main hall, which was a wide stone building she had built with her own hands over 14 months. She served him tea. She asked him 12 precise questions about the proposed trade routes. She sent him back with a counteroffer that so thoroughly outmaneuvered the original proposal that Tolliver came in person the following week. He left with exactly what she had decided he could have. Word traveled the way it always does, sideways, through channels people don't notice. Sarah Vale of the Border Wilds. She is not an Alpha by inheritance. She is something else. Aldrich of the Solace Mountains arrived 6 months later, and he did not send a second ahead. He came himself, which was either reckless or confident, and she had not yet decided which. He was tall, with the particular ease of a man who had never needed to prove anything. He sat across from her in her stone hall, took the tea she offered, and looked at her for a moment with an expression that was plainly appraising, and made no attempt to hide it. "I'll be direct," he said. "I appreciate that. I've heard what you've built here. I've watched how you handled the Fenwick negotiation. My pack needs someone who thinks the way you think. My pack needs you." He paused. "And I would like, if you're willing to consider it, to offer a great deal more than an alliance." She looked at him steadily. "You're proposing a union. I'm proposing to ask you to consider one. I know the difference." She liked that he knew the difference. She told him she would think about it. What she did not tell him was that she had been thinking about very little else since the moment his name appeared in Vanda's trader reports 3 months prior. She had been preparing for this conversation. She simply had not anticipated liking him. She first heard her own name in a war room context through the trader network, secondhand, 6 words that told her everything she needed to know. Ironmore is watching the wilds. She did not adjust her plans. 3 months after Aldrich's visit, the multi-territory crisis arrived like all crises do. Suddenly, and with the air of something that had been building for years, a rogue faction called the Ashborn had been quietly acquiring land, wolves, and weapons along the southern edges of the Accord territories. 7 Alphas were required by the Accord's founding law to ratify a combined defense agreement. There were 6. The 7th seat, under territorial charter law, belonged to the Border Wilds. The seat belonged to Sarah. She dressed for the summit in the same manner she did everything, with attention and without performance. She chose practical clothes in deep colors. She braided her hair back. She arrived at the council hall in Vareth City, with Vanda at her side, and Aldrich waiting at the entrance, who gave her one single nod that contained, she felt, more genuine respect than she had received in 3 years in Ironmore combined. She walked into the chamber. Caius was already seated. The bond hit her like a change in weather. Not painful, but present, the way an old healed scar sometimes aches when the temperature drops. She noticed it. She set it aside. She looked at Aldrich, who was watching her, and she smiled. Small, private, not meant for the room. The room saw it anyway. Caius went very still across the table. She did not look at him for another 40 minutes. When she finally did, it was because he had spoken, a proposed defense perimeter that she recognized immediately as insufficient. Not from malice, but from incomplete information about the Ashborn's actual movement patterns, which she knew in detail because 3 of her wolves had come from Ashborn-adjacent territories and had told her things no Alpha delegation had thought to ask. "That perimeter fails at the Marsh Crossing," she said simply. "They've already set a secondary camp there. Your line would walk into it." The room shifted. Caius looked at her. "How confident are you in that?" asked Tolliver from the Fenwick delegation. "Completely," she said. She then laid out the actual defense strategy, the one she had been building in her mind for 4 months, cross-referenced with Aldrich's information about northern supply lines. It took her 11 minutes to present it. It took the council approximately 7 minutes to realize it was the best option on the table. It took them another 20 to admit it. The strategy they adopted that day was hers, with 3 modifications from Aldrich that she endorsed without hesitation. It was a good collaboration. She noted that and set it aside for later consideration. That evening, Caius requested a private meeting. She granted it. She sat across from him in a small room off the main hall, a single lantern on the table between them, and she waited while he organized himself. He had prepared something. She could tell by the way he held his hands, clasped, deliberate, the posture of someone working from a rehearsed position. He spoke about obligation. He spoke about the political landscape 3 years ago, and the calculation he had made. He spoke about the Marin alliance and its necessity. He spoke carefully and at length, and she listened to all of it without interrupting. He was good with words. He always had been. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You didn't reject me because of politics." He blinked. That had not been in his prepared response. "You rejected me because the bond frightened you," she continued. "Because something you didn't control walked into your life and told you what it wanted. And you spent so long being the person who decided things that you could not stand being decided for." She looked at him without cruelty and without warmth. The politics were real. I'm not saying they weren't, but they were also very convenient. He said nothing for a long moment. "I am sorry," he said finally, and she believed him, which made it harder and easier at the same time. "I know," she said. She stood. "You chose who you were willing to wound. I chose what I was willing to become." She picked up her coat from the back of the chair. "I think we both got exactly what we asked for." The door closed behind her with the quietest possible click. The next morning, she found Marin sitting in the courtyard. It's Caius's political bride was a composed woman in her early 30s, with a watchful quality that Sarah recognized, the specific vigilance of a woman who had spent years in rooms where decisions were made about her. She did not look resentful. She looked tired in the deep way. She said, "I didn't come to accuse you of anything." "I know," Sarah said. "He doesn't sleep without the lights on." Marin looked at her hands. "He keeps your name in his territorial files, under the Wilds correspondence, like it's a political document." She paused. "I think he does it because it gives him somewhere to put you that feels controlled." Sarah sat down beside her. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, "that you were the transaction." "I knew I was a transaction going in," Marin said. "I just didn't know what it would feel like from the inside." She looked up. "I don't want anything from you. I just wanted you to know that he understands what he lost, in case it matters." "It matters," Sarah said honestly. "It doesn't change anything, but it matters." They sat together in the courtyard for another hour. They talked about things that had nothing to do with Caius. It was, Sarah thought afterward, one of the better conversations she had in Vareth City. She left the summit with 3 new formal alliances, a defense strategy bearing her name in the council records, and Aldrich riding beside her for the first 2 days of the journey home. On the second evening, they stopped at a ridgeline where the last light spread orange and low over the tree line below. He did not pressure her. He asked her one question: "Are you any closer to a decision?" "Yes," she said. "In my direction?" "Possibly." He accepted that with grace. She respected him enormously for it. She rode into the border wilds the following afternoon to find Vanda in the clearing with a fire already going and something good cooking, and 32 wolves who had spent the last 4 days managing things capably in her absence, because she had built something that did not require her to hold it together every second. She stood at the edge of her own territory and breathed in the cold, clean air of a place she had made from nothing, and she felt, not happiness exactly, not yet, but something older and more durable than happiness. She was thinking about Aldrich's offer. She was thinking about the way Caius had looked at her across that council table, not with regret, but with recognition, finally, the way someone looks when they read a word they have been mispronouncing for years and suddenly hear how it actually sounds. She did not think about him long. She had other things to do.